Chapter 1. Marion and Sam. In a dim hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona, Marion Crane stood in front of a mirror. The room was quiet and a little gloomy. She looked tired and worried. Her hair was messy, and she knew she should already be back at the office. "Please don't leave yet, Marion," a voice said behind her. In the mirror, she saw Sam, sitting on the edge of the bed. She gave him a small, unhappy smile. "I really have to return to work, Sam," she replied. "My boss is starting to notice how long my lunch breaks are." "But it's already Friday afternoon," Sam answered. "We hardly ever get time together. Can't you stay a little longer?" Marion walked across the room and picked up her handbag. "Stay? For what?" she said quietly. "Another secret meeting like always? Hiding in a cheap little hotel and hoping nobody sees us?" She turned toward him, anger shining in her eyes. "For us, it's always the same." But after a moment, her expression softened. She looked up at him sadly and rested her face in his hand. "Oh, Sam," she whispered. "Why can't we just get married now? I want to be with you every day. I want to walk with you openly in the street, so everyone can see that we belong together." Sam slowly stepped away and moved to the window. Outside, the city of Phoenix lay hot and dry under the afternoon sun. "We will marry," he said quietly. "But only after I finish paying my father's debts. I still need $11,000. "And how long will that take?" Marion asked. "Maybe 2 years. Perhaps 3. "Oh, Sam!" she cried. She dropped her handbag onto the bed and ran to him. 3 years is too long. I don't care about money." She kissed him, almost in tears. "I just want to be with you. I could leave my job. I could come and help you in your shop." Sam shook his head gently. "Marion, try to understand. I don't want us to begin our marriage with nothing. I want us to have a good life together. In 3 years, you'll be my wife, Mrs. Sam Loomis. I promise." Marion sighed and rested her head on his shoulder. "In 3 years, I'll be 29, she thought unhappily. Suddenly, she remembered the time. "I really must go," she said quickly, picking up her bag. Sam stayed by the window as she walked to the door. "I'm already late," she added. "Mr. Lowry will be furious." Chapter 2. Marion's Plan. "Sorry I'm late," Marion said quickly as she rushed into the office. "That's all right," the other secretary replied. "Mr. Lowry is out having lunch with a client." Marion smiled weakly and sat down at her desk. "Did anyone call while I was gone?" she asked. "Only your sister. She said she's away for the weekend." At that moment, Mr. Lowry came into the office. With him was a man in a cowboy hat who spoke loudly and confidently. Marion lowered her head at once and pretended to work. She already knew who the man was. Mr. Lowry had mentioned Cassidy before, and she had never liked the sound of him. He was an unpleasant, greedy man who cared about nothing but money. Cassidy sat casually on the corner of Marion's desk and pulled a photograph from his pocket. "This is my daughter," he said proudly. "She's 18, and life has always been good for her." Marion looked at the picture and then back at him. She didn't like the way he watched her with his cold, bright eyes and his strange smile. "She's getting married next month," Cassidy continued, "and I'm buying a house for the young couple." Then he pulled a thick bundle of cash from his pocket and waved it in front of her. $40,000, he said proudly. "That should make anyone happy. Wouldn't you agree?" Marion glanced at the money and forced a polite smile. "Tell me, Marion," Cassidy asked, "are you happy?" Holding the money where she could see it, he waited for her answer. Inside, Marion felt angry. She wanted to shout, "How could I be happy?" Sam and I must wait years before we can marry while he struggles to pay his father's debts, and you have money to throw around." But she said nothing. Cassidy laughed and walked into Mr. Lowry's office. Mr. Lowry stayed behind for a moment, looking uneasily at the money on Marion's desk. "I don't want that cash staying here all weekend," he said quietly. "Please take it to the bank after work." "Could I go now?" Marion asked. "I've got a terrible headache." Mr. Lowry nodded. "That's fine. Take it straight to the bank, and then go home and rest." Marion placed the money in a white envelope, slipped it into her handbag, and left the office. But she didn't drive to the bank. Instead, an idea slowly began to form in her mind. $40,000, she thought. That would be enough for Sam to pay off the debts. Then we could finally marry. Excited by the thought, Marion went home first. She packed some clothes into a suitcase and soon was driving out of Phoenix. Later, while she waited at a traffic light, she glanced at the bag beside her that held the money. "Of course I can't tell Sam the truth," she thought. "I'll need a story to explain where the money came from." Suddenly, someone crossing the street stopped in front of her car. It was Mr. Lowry. Without thinking, Marion smiled and waved to him. He looked at her carefully, then continued walking. "Oh no," she thought nervously. "Now he knows I didn't go home because of my headache. If he suspects that I've taken the money, he might call the police. I have to get away quickly. If I reach Fairville before Monday, no one will find me. I'll be safe with Sam." The drive was long. She traveled through the desert all night, and by morning she was exhausted. Finally, she pulled off the highway and stopped on a quiet roadside. "I'll rest for just 30 minutes, she told herself. But she was far more tired than she realized. Stretching out across the front seat of the car, Marion fell asleep and did not wake until morning. Chapter 3. The Lonely Motel. Marion suddenly woke up. Someone was standing next to her car. It was a policeman. He had a thin mouth and wore dark glasses. He was looking at her through the window. For a moment, Marion felt afraid. She quickly sat up and turned the key in the car. The policeman knocked on the glass. "Please stop the car," he said. Marion slowly opened the window. She tried to stay calm. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked. "No problem," the policeman replied. "But why are you sleeping here?" "I was tired," Marion said. "So I stopped to rest." "There are hotels nearby," the policeman said. "Why didn't you stay in one of them?" "I only wanted to sleep for a short time," Marion answered. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," the policeman said, but his voice sounded suspicious. "May I see your driver's license?" Marion turned slightly away from him and opened her handbag. Inside the bag was a large white envelope filled with money. The policeman tried to look inside, but Marion carefully covered the envelope with her bag. Then she handed him her documents. The policeman examined them slowly. After a minute, he gave them back. Without saying anything more, he returned to his car. Marion immediately started her engine and drove away. After a few minutes, she looked in the mirror. Her heart began to beat faster. The police car was behind her. He was following her. Marion slowed down a little. She hoped he would drive past, but he stayed behind her. "Why is he following me?" she thought nervously. "Has Mr. Lowry already reported the money missing? If he has, I must change this car quickly," she thought. "I cannot let anyone follow me to Fairvale." At last, the police car turned onto another road. Marion felt a little calmer. About an hour later, she reached a small town. She stopped at a garage and asked about exchanging her car for another one. While the mechanic inspected her car, Marion walked into the street. She wanted to buy a newspaper. Then she suddenly saw the policeman again. He was standing across a road beside his car, and he was watching her. Marian pretended not to notice him. She bought the newspaper and quickly looked through it. Good, she thought. There is nothing about the money. Nobody knows yet. That policeman is only trying to scare me. She returned to the garage and pointed at another car. I want this one, she said. Would you like to test it first? The mechanic asked. No, Marian replied quickly. I'm in a hurry. How much will it cost? Your car and $700. Marian went to the washroom. She opened the white envelope and took out the money. When she returned, she handed the cash to the mechanic. He looked at her with surprise. Then Marian quickly sat in her new car. Just a moment, miss. Her heart jumped. She turned quickly, but it was only another worker from the garage. He was carrying her coat and suitcase. You forgot these in your old car, he said. He placed them in the back seat. Marian thanked him and drove away. Behind her, the policeman walked across the road. He stopped beside the mechanic. Did that woman seem unusual to you? He asked. The mechanic nodded. Yes, he said. Very unusual. Marian drove for many hours. She crossed dry desert roads and later climbed into the hills. Soon evening came. Dark clouds filled the sky. Then rain began to fall. Marian felt tired and hungry. She looked carefully through the rain for a place to stay. But the road was empty. No lights, no cars, nothing. I must be on the wrong road, she thought. If I turn around and find the highway again, I'll find a hotel. Just then, she saw a small light near the road. At first, she thought it was her imagination. A motel? Out here? She whispered. That can't be real. She blinked and looked again. The light was still there. A small sign glowed in the rain. It said, Bates Motel. Marian slowly drove toward it. I can't believe it, she said quietly. This must be my lucky night. Well, Chapter 4. Norman. There were no other cars outside the motel. The office door was open, but nobody was inside. Marian waited for a moment. Behind the motel, on a hill, stood a large old house. One window on the first floor was glowing with light. Behind the curtain, she saw a shadow moving. At first, Marian thought it was a woman, but soon she realized it was a man. He hurried down the hill toward the motel. Marian stepped out of her car. The young man approached her. He was tall and thin, with a friendly and youthful face. I'm sorry, he said with a smile. I wasn't in the office. Do you have a room available? Marian asked. All 12 rooms are empty, he said. You are the first guest tonight. You're completely wet. Please come inside. Inside the office, Marian wrote her name in the guest book, but it was not her real name. She wrote, Mary Samuels. The young man watched her carefully. Then he chose a key from a small box. Room number 1, he said. It's right next to the office. He carried her suitcase from the car. Marian followed him to the room. He turned on the light and opened the window. The room is small, he said, but it's comfortable, and there is a shower in the bedroom. Thank you, Mr. Bates, Marian said. My name is Norman, he replied. If you need anything, I'll be in the office. I only want to sleep, Marian said. But first, I like something to eat. Norman thought for a moment. There is a restaurant about 10 miles away, he said, near Fairvale. Then he smiled shyly. But it's raining, and it's a long drive. If you like, you could have dinner with me. It's very simple food. Bread, milk, maybe cheese. You could come to the house. Marian smiled politely. That's very kind of you. Norman's eyes brightened. I'll bring an umbrella when everything is ready, he said. Then he hurried away. Marian closed the door and finally smiled. For the first time in many hours, she felt a little relaxed. What a strange young man, she thought. He's almost like a shy boy. But she still had something important to think about: the money. Marian looked around the room for a safe place to hide it. There was very little furniture. Finally, she placed the envelope inside her newspaper. Then she left it beside the bed. Just then, she heard a loud voice. It came from the house on the hill. Marian walked to the window and listened. It was the angry voice of an older woman. "You cannot bring strange girls into this house. Mother, please," Norman's voice replied. "So first you invite them here," the woman continued. "And what happens next? Music after dinner? Holding hands? Kissing?" "Mother," Norman said quietly, "she's just a traveler. She's hungry, and it's raining." "She will not eat with my son in this house," the woman shouted. "Do you understand? Will you send her away, or should I come down and tell her myself?" "Stop it!" Norman cried suddenly. "Stop it, Mother!" Then everything became quiet. The night was silent again. Chapter 5. Mad Things. Marian heard the front door of the large house close. A few moments later, she stepped out of her room and met Norman, who was standing nervously outside. "I'm sorry," Marian said. "I think I caused trouble for you." "No, it's my mother," Norman replied quietly. "She's not feeling well today. I'm sorry, but I can't take you into the house. I brought the food to my office. Would you like to eat there?" Marian agreed and followed him into a small room behind the office. It was an unusual place, filled with old clocks and stuffed birds. Norman watched her in silence as she began to eat. After a moment, he spoke. "You eat very little, like a bird. Do you like birds?" "I don't really know much about them," Marian said. "Do you?" "I don't study them," Norman replied. "I just like preparing them, stuffing them." Marian looked at him. "That's a rather strange hobby." Norman smiled slightly. "I enjoy it." "Don't you have anything else to do?" she asked. "I'm busy all the time," he said. "I run the office, clean the rooms, and take care of my mother." He paused, then asked suddenly, "Do you have many friends?" Norman looked surprised by his own question. "A boy's best friend is his mother," he said quietly. Marian looked down at her plate. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was silent, except for the ticking of a clock. Then Norman said, "The rain has stopped." Marian gave a polite smile and continued eating. "Where are you traveling?" Norman asked, trying again to keep the conversation going. "Somewhere better," Marian replied. Norman studied her carefully. "What are you trying to escape from?" he asked. Marian looked up, surprised. "Why would you say that?" Norman shrugged slightly. "People are always running away from something, but they never really escape, do they?" He paused, then added, "Sometimes, when my mother speaks to me in a certain way, I feel like leaving everything behind, but I know I can't. She's ill." "She didn't seem ill to me," Marian said. "I mean, mentally ill," Norman explained. "My father died when I was very young. After that, it was just the two of us." He looked away, his eyes growing darker. "Some years later, she met a man. She loved him, maybe more than she loved me." He stopped for a moment. "When he died, and the way he died, that changed her. That's when her mind became unstable." Marian felt sympathy for him. He seemed lonely, like a child who had never left home, living his whole life in a small motel with a troubled mother. "Why don't you leave this place?" she asked gently. Norman shook his head. "When you love someone, you don't leave them. Then why not take her somewhere? A hospital, perhaps." Norman's expression suddenly changed. "You mean a place for the insane?" he said sharply. I'm sorry, Marian said quickly. I didn't mean to offend you. My mother is not insane, Norman said, his eyes intense. Then, just as suddenly, he relaxed. He smiled again, speaking more softly. I know you didn't mean anything. I just don't like talking about it. My mother isn't dangerous. She doesn't hurt anyone. She just behaves strangely sometimes. He looked directly at Marian. We all do strange things sometimes, don't we? His gaze fell deep, almost uncomfortable. And don't you ever do something a little crazy? Marian smiled faintly. Yes, sometimes. She thought about the $40,000 hidden in her room. The day before, she had done something reckless, taken the money and run away with it. I have to return it, she thought. Tomorrow morning. She stood up. Thank you for the meal, she said. I'm tired, and I have a long drive ahead of me, back to Phoenix. She hesitated, then added quietly, I made a mistake. I want to fix it before it's too late. Norman smiled warmly. I'm glad we talked, he said. I'll bring you breakfast in the morning. Please make it early, Marian replied. Chapter 6. As clean as snow. Marian returned to her room and sat down on the bed. What a foolish thing I did, she thought. Taking that money, it feels like a nightmare. After her conversation with Norman, everything seemed clearer. On Monday morning, I'll go straight to the bank and return it. No one will ever know. Everything will be fine. She stood up. A strange feeling of relief came over her. She felt lighter, almost happy. After a shower, I'll feel completely fresh, she thought. Clean, like new. She took off her clothes and dropped them onto the bed. She didn't know that someone was watching her. There was a small hole in the wall between her room and the room behind Norman's office. From there, Norman was looking in. He watched silently as Marian undressed. Before stepping into the shower, Marian paused. She suddenly remembered something, went to the small desk, and quickly wrote a few numbers on a piece of paper. I spent $700, she thought. I'll have to replace that later. Then she shook her head. It doesn't matter now. I'm too tired to think about money. She walked back, dropped the paper into the toilet, and got into the bath. Pulling the curtain closed, she turned on the water. Warm water flowed over her body. She closed her eyes. The tension began to fade away. The bad dream was ending. She didn't hear the bathroom door open. She didn't see the figure entering the room. Someone moved slowly across the floor. The curtain was suddenly pulled aside. Marian turned. Through the water in her eyes, she saw a face. Pale, twisted, with gray hair and wild, shining eyes. Above the figure's head, a raised hand, holding a long, shining knife. Marian screamed. The figure let out a strange laugh. The knife came down. Again and again. Marian tried to fight, but she was too weak. Her voice grew quieter. Her strength disappeared. At last, with a soft, broken sound, she collapsed. The water kept running. It flowed over her still body, over her face, over her eyes. Everything went silent. Marian Crane was dead. End quote. Chapter 7. The Swamp. Norman stared in horror at the blood on his mother's clothes. Mother, oh God. His voice shook. Blood. He ran from the house, down the hill, toward the motel. It couldn't be real. His mother? A killer? No, that was impossible. But when he entered the room, he saw the truth. The girl lay in the bath, still, silent, her eyes open, dead. Norman stood frozen in the doorway. His stomach turned. His mind raced. What should I do? For a moment, he thought about calling the police. But no, he couldn't. Not now. His mother wasn't truly guilty. She was ill. A person who was sick in the mind wasn't the same as a criminal. He had to protect her. He had to make sure no one ever found out. The girl had come alone. No one knew she was there. There was still time. The only solution was to make everything disappear. He turned off the lights and the water. Then he pulled down the shower curtain and spread it across the floor. Carefully, he lifted Marion's body from the bath and laid it onto the plastic. After that, he cleaned the room. He wiped away every trace of blood from the walls and the floor. When everything looked clean, he wrapped the body inside the curtain. Then, he carried it outside, to her car. He returned once more and gathered all her belongings, placing them into a suitcase. That went into the car as well. He looked around the room one last time. Everything seemed normal. Near the bed, he noticed a newspaper. Without thinking, he picked it up and tossed it into the car, not knowing what was hidden inside. Then he got behind the wheel and drove away. Not far from the motel, there was a swamp. When he reached it, he stepped out and pushed the car forward. Slowly, it began to sink. He watched anxiously. For a moment, it stopped. Then, little by little, it disappeared beneath the dark water. Norman let out a breath. A faint smile appeared on his face. Now she's safe, he thought. No one will ever know what happened. Chapter 8. Lila. A week later, Sam Loomis was sitting in the small office at the back of his shop. He was writing a letter to Marion. Since last Friday, I've been thinking about everything you said, he wrote. You were right. Money isn't important. I want us to be together now. I want to marry you. While he was still writing, Bob Summerfield, the young man who worked in the shop, called out, Sam, there's a young woman here to see you. Sam stood up and walked into the front of the shop. There, he saw a young woman with fair hair. She was holding a small suitcase. I'm Lila, she said. Marion's sister. Her voice was serious. Is she here? Sam frowned. No, of course she isn't. Why? What's happened? Lila's face changed. Her voice began to shake. I haven't seen her since last Friday, she said. She left without telling anyone. She hasn't even called me. She took a step closer. If she's here, I need to speak to her. She's in serious trouble. Tears filled her eyes. Sam quickly told Bob to leave them alone, then turned back to Lila. Tell me everything, he said gently. What kind of trouble are you talking about? Before she could answer, another voice came from the doorway. Yes, let's talk about Marion. Both Sam and Lila turned. A short man stepped inside. His hat was pulled low over his eyes, and he carried a raincoat over his arm. My name is Arbogast, he said, showing them a card. I'm a private detective. I don't work for the police. He looked directly at Lila. Miss Crane, where is your sister? Sam stepped forward. Why are you asking that? Arbogast answered calmly. $40,000. Sam stared at him. I don't understand. Your girlfriend took that money, the detective said. Sam looked at Lila. Is that true? Lila nodded and began to explain. Her voice sounded cold at first. She clearly believed that Sam knew where Marion was hiding. But as she spoke, her tone changed. Listen, Sam, she said more softly. Her boss doesn't want to involve the police. He just wants the money back. If she's here, she isn't, Sam said firmly. Arbogast watched them carefully. Miss Crane, he said, why did you come here? Did you know your sister might be in Fairvale? I hoped she was, Lila replied. But I wasn't sure. The detective studied her face in silence. It's the truth, she added angrily. Why don't you believe me? I'm only doing my job, Arbogast said calmly. Sam crossed his arms. If that's true, have you checked hospitals in Phoenix? Maybe she had an accident. Arbogast shook his head. That's unlikely. Her employer saw her last Friday. She was driving out of Phoenix with the money. Then he turned back to Lila and gave her a small, reassuring smile. I think she's somewhere near here, he said. Maybe not with her boyfriend, but close. He tapped his head lightly. I have a feeling. He moved toward the door. Don't worry, he said. I'll find her. And with that, he left. Chapter 9. A few questions. The following day, Arbogast visited every hotel and motel near Fairvale. He showed a photograph everywhere he went. Have you seen this girl? He asked again and again. Each time, the answer was the same. No. Later, as he drove along the old highway outside town, he noticed a small roadside motel. Maybe this time, he thought. I've already checked all the others. He turned off the road and pulled up in front of the building. Norman Bates was sitting outside his office, enjoying the evening sun and reading a magazine. When Arbogast stepped out of his car, Norman stood up and smiled politely. I almost drove past, Arbogast said. I forgot to turn on the sign, Norman replied. Would you like a room? No, thank you. I just need to ask a few questions. Norman hesitated for a moment, then turned toward the office. What kind of questions? He asked. I'm looking for a young woman, Arbogast said, following him inside. My name is Arbogast. I'm a private detective. Norman tried to stay calm. A girl? Her name is Marion Crane, Arbogast continued. She's from Phoenix. She disappeared last Friday, and her family is worried. He showed the photograph. Have you seen her? Norman shook his head quickly, avoiding the picture. No, I don't think so. Perhaps she stopped here about a week ago? Arbogast asked. No, Norman replied. I haven't had any guests for over 2 weeks. Business has been slow since they changed the highway. May I look at your register? The detective asked. Without speaking, Norman handed him the book. Arbogast took out an envelope and carefully compared the writing inside. Then he paused. Here, he said, pointing. Mary Samuels from Los Angeles. She stayed here last Saturday night. He tapped the page. The handwriting matches this envelope, and this belongs to Miss Crane. Norman's face went pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Finally, he spoke quietly. It's sometimes difficult. What is? Arbogast asked. Remembering things. I understand, Arbogast said gently, trying not to alarm him. Norman took a breath. I wasn't lying, he said. I just forgot about her. That's all right, the detective replied calmly. The friendly tone seemed to relax Norman. He smiled weakly and asked to see the photograph again. This time he studied it carefully. Oh, yes, he said slowly. I remember now. It was raining. She arrived late at night. She looked tired and went straight to bed. And the next morning? Arbogast asked. She left early. Did she speak to anyone? No, she was alone. Did she make any phone calls? No. How can you be sure? Norman closed his eyes for a moment. He was struggling again. She said she was very tired. he answered at last. She wanted to rest because she had a long drive the next day. Then he stepped back. I'm sorry, Mr. Arbogast. I have work to do. One more question, the detective said. Is she still here? Of course not, Norman replied quickly. I told you already. If you don't believe me, you can check all the rooms. That won't be necessary, Arbogast said with a small smile. They walked outside together. It was already dark. Arbogast looked up at the house on the hill and noticed a light in one of the windows. Is someone there? He asked. Norman turned and followed his gaze. No, well, that's my mother, he said. She's unwell. Arbogast studied him carefully. Then he asked, Did that girl offer you money? Norman frowned. What do you mean? To hide her here, perhaps? I'm not accusing you, Arbogast said calmly, but maybe she told you a story, and you believed her. Norman's expression changed. I'm not a fool, he said sharply. No, of course not, Arbogast replied, but sometimes it's easy to trust a pretty girl. Norman became tense again. My mother didn't believe anything she said, he added. Arbogast raised his eyebrows. So your mother spoke to her. Can I meet your mother? He asked. I'd like to talk to her. No, Norman answered immediately. She's ill. I told you. Arbogast hesitated. There was something cold and firm in Norman's voice now. He decided not to push further. I'll come back later, he thought, after I speak with the girl's sister. Chapter 10. Shadow Behind the Curtain. After calling Lila and telling her about his talk with Norman Bates, Arbogast drove back to the motel. This time the office light was on, and the sign was lit, but Norman was nowhere to be seen. He glanced up at the old house on the hill. A figure was still visible in the window, the outline of an elderly woman behind the curtain. I'll have to speak with her myself, he thought. He walked up the hill and noticed the front door was slightly open. Stepping inside, he removed his hat and paused, listening. The house was completely silent. He looked around, old pictures on the walls, faded wallpaper with flowers, a mirror reflecting the dim light. Everything felt strange and uneasy. Deciding not to wait, he quietly moved toward the stairs and began to climb. He tried not to make any sound. Deep down, he felt nervous. At the top, he suddenly heard a door open. He turned and saw her. An old woman rushed toward him. Her face was pale, her eyes wild, her movements quick and unnatural. In her raised hand, she held a large knife. He didn't have time to react. The blade struck his face, cutting down from his head across his eye. He fell backward, crashing down the stairs. He lay there, unable to move. Somehow, he managed to lift his head slightly and look up. She was coming down toward him again, screaming like a wild creature. The last thing he saw was her face above him as she drove the knife straight into his chest. Chapter 11. A Visit to the Sheriff. Sam and Lila sat in the back room of the shop, waiting. It's been over an hour, Lila said nervously. Why hasn't he come back? Maybe he found something important, Sam replied. But Lila stood up. No, something's wrong. I'm going to the highway. I know he's there. Are you coming? I'll go, Sam said. You stay here, in case he returns. When Sam reached the motel, it was dark and empty. He called Arbogast's name several times, no answer. Looking up at the house, he noticed someone at the window. That must be the mother, he thought. He climbed the hill and knocked, but again, no one answered. Worried, he returned to town. There's nobody there, he told Lila. No Arbogast, No Norman. Just that strange woman in the house. I knew it, Lila said. Something is wrong. We should go to the police. They went to see Sheriff Chambers. It was late, but he and his wife let them in and listened carefully. Sam explained everything: Marion, the stolen money, and Arbogast's visit to the motel. He called us, Sam said. He wanted to speak with Mrs. Bates, but that was hours ago. Mrs. Bates? The sheriff's wife said. I didn't know Norman had a wife. It's not his wife, Sam said. It's his mother. The sheriff frowned. When did your sister disappear? He asked Lila. A week ago. And why didn't you go to the police? Lila hesitated. She took some money. How much? $40,000. The room fell silent. The detective mentioned the money? The sheriff asked. That doesn't matter, Lila said quietly. I just want to find her. The sheriff nodded slowly. Then his wife suggested, Why don't you call the motel? The sheriff picked up the phone and called Norman. After a short conversation, he hung up. He says, The detective came, the sheriff said, asked questions, and left. Without seeing his mother? Lila asked. The sheriff looked at her seriously. Norman's mother died 10 years ago. Sam and Lila froze. That's impossible, Sam said. I saw her. Arbogast saw her too, Lila added. The sheriff exchanged a glance with his wife. Then who did we see? He said quietly. Meanwhile, Norman slowly put down the phone. The police are coming, he thought. I must hide Mother. He ran up to the house and into her room. Mother, listen. But she laughed at him. You foolish boy. Don't tell me what to do. They'll come for you, Norman said desperately. I'm not going anywhere, she snapped. This is my house. Norman tried to explain, but she refused to listen. Finally, he made a decision. He lifted her from the bed and carried her out of the room, down the stairs, and into the fruit cellar. Chapter 12. Room 1 Rewritten. The next morning, Sunday, Sam and Lila met Sheriff Chambers and his wife as they were leaving church. Would you like to come to the motel with us? Lila asked. I was already there this morning, the sheriff replied. Everything is just as he told your detective. I assure you, Miss Crane, Norman Bates is alone. I checked the place carefully. You didn't see his mother? Lila asked. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. He explained that if they wanted official help, they would need to make a report. After saying goodbye, Sam tried to calm Lila. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe it was only a shadow behind the curtain. No, Lila said firmly. Something is wrong. We're going back there now. They drove quickly along the old highway to the motel. While Sam went into the office to look for Bates, Lila stayed outside. Her eyes were drawn to the house on the hill. Even in daylight, it looked dark and unsettling. Suddenly, she saw a tall, thin man at the top of the hill. He stood still for a moment, then began walking quickly down toward her. Lila called Sam. Norman Bates approached them calmly, as if nothing was unusual. Looking for a room? He asked politely. Yes, Sam answered. Norman led them into the office and offered a room. Sam asked to sign the register first. While he wrote his name, Norman kept watching Lila. She was reading the names in the book. He understood who they were and why they had come, but he kept his face relaxed. He handed them the key and offered to show the room, but Sam said they would find it themselves. When they were alone, Lila sat on the bed and began to cry. I feel something terrible has happened to Marion, she said. That house, that man, something isn't right. We need proof, Sam replied. They decided to search room 1, the room where Marion had stayed. After checking that no one was around, they moved quickly and quietly down the row of rooms. They searched everything but found nothing in the bedroom. Then they went into the bathroom. That's strange, Sam said. There's no shower curtain. At that moment, Lila noticed something in the toilet. She carefully took out a small piece of paper. It was wet, but the number was still visible. Look, 40,000, she said softly. She turned to Sam. This proves Marion was here, and Bates knew about the money. Sam nodded and moved toward the door. I'll talk to him. But Lila stopped him. No, I want to speak to the woman in the house. She told the detective something now she'll tell me. Sam didn't like the idea, but he agreed. He opened the door slightly and looked outside. It's clear. No one's watching. Lila quickly ran toward the hill. Sam quietly closed the door and went to find Bates in the office. Are you looking for me? Bates asked. Yes, Sam said, standing in front of him so he couldn't see outside. My wife is resting, and I felt like talking. Norman smiled. Of course. Come in, and closed the door. Chapter 13. The House on the Hill. Lila slowly climbed the hill toward the old house. She pushed the front door. It opened with a long, quiet creak. She stepped inside and gently closed the door behind her. Outside, the sun was bright, but inside, the air felt cold and heavy. The house was dark. There was a strange smell. Old wood, dust, and forgotten things. I must not be afraid, Lila thought. I have to find the old woman. She knows something about Marion. Maybe my sister is here. Thinking about her sister gave her courage. Lila moved carefully toward the stairs. Back at the motel, Sam stood in the office, watching Norman. You don't talk much, do you? He said. Norman leaned against the wall, his hands in his pockets. He gave a short, nervous laugh. I thought people who live alone like to talk. You do live alone, right? Yes, Norman said quietly. I hate being alone, Sam continued. When I'm alone, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Norman stopped smiling. Why would you say that? Sam shrugged. I think people who stay alone too long go crazy. He looked satisfied with his own words. Norman's face tightened. Don't you agree? Sam asked. Norman's cheeks slowly turned red. At that moment, Lila reached the top of the stairs. She stood in front of a bedroom door. She knocked softly. Mrs. Bates? She called. No answer. Lila slowly pushed the door open and stepped inside. She froze. Everything in the room looked extremely old. Heavy curtains covered the windows. Soft golden lamps stood against dark walls. It felt as if time had stopped. Lila walked slowly across the room. She stopped in front of a large wardrobe with a mirror on the door. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside, long dresses were hanging. Old dresses, bright, patterned, and very old-fashioned, clothes from another time. She quietly closed the wardrobe. Then she looked around again. Her eyes stopped on a small table near the bed. There were little glass figures shaped like cats, old silver dishes, and photographs, pictures of children, or maybe the same child at different ages. Everything felt frozen. But one thing was even stranger. The room was perfectly clean. Too clean. If this is the mother's room, Lila thought, why does nothing change? It's like no one touches anything. Only the bed looked used. The blanket was slightly disturbed. She was here recently, Lila whispered. So she must be somewhere in the house. But where? Back in the motel office, you don't look happy here, Sam said. Why don't you leave this place? Norman slowly shook his head. This place is my life, he said. I grew up in that house. I was happy there. My mother and I, we were very close. Upstairs, Lila entered another room. It was small and untidy. The bed was unmade. Books were scattered everywhere. There were toys on the floor. Norman's room, she thought. She picked up one of the books. It was about strange illnesses and the human mind. Another book spoke about dark secrets and unusual behavior. Looking around, Lila began to understand. He's like a child, she thought. A clever child who never really grew up. He depends on his mother. Back in the office, you look nervous, Sam said. Did I scare you? Norman frowned. What are you talking about? I mentioned your mother, Sam said slowly. And suddenly, you looked afraid. Norman said nothing. Sam stepped closer. So, how are you going to do it? Do what? Norman asked sharply. Start a new life, Sam replied. A new motel in another town. You won't need to hide your mother anymore. Norman's eyes became cold. He didn't like this man. Not at all. And where will you get the money? Sam continued. Or do you already have it? $40,000? Maybe? Norman turned away and walked into the back room. Sam followed him. Your mother knows about the money, doesn't she? Sam said. She knows what you did, and I think she might tell us. Norman suddenly turned around. His eyes were burning. His heart was racing. Now I understand, he shouted. I know why you are here. Where is that girl who came with you? Sam said nothing. He turned and walked toward the door. That was his mistake. Norman grabbed a heavy metal box. He rushed forward and struck Sam hard on the head. Sam fell to the floor. Without stopping, Norman ran out of the office. I must find that girl, he thought, before she finds Mother. And he ran quickly up the hill toward the old house. Chapter 14. The Cellar. When Lila came back down the stairs, she stopped. Through the window near the front door, she saw Bates. He was running up the hill toward the house. There was no time to think about Sam. She had to hide. Lila hurried toward the kitchen. Behind her, she heard the front door open. Bates was inside. Suddenly, she saw a narrow staircase. It led down into a cellar. Without hesitation, she stepped onto the top stair and waited. Bates stood still for a moment. He couldn't see her, but he knew she was there, somewhere in the house, probably upstairs, searching for his mother. Lila listened. She heard him go up the stairs, into his mother's room. Now, she could escape. She could run and find Sam. But she didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the dark staircase below. What if the mother was down there? What if Marion and Arbogast were still alive, hidden somewhere in the cellar? She had to know. Slowly, carefully, she began to go down. The cellar was dark. The air was heavy. There was a strange smell. Oil, dust, and something dead. Lila stood still for a few seconds. Then she noticed a faint light, far away, on the other side of the room. It came from under a door. She moved toward it, step by step, passing old tables covered with glass bottles, knives, and metal tins. Her breath was quiet, her heart loud. At last, she reached the door. She pushed it open, slowly. Inside, there was a small room. A single light burned on the ceiling. In the center stood a wooden chair. It faced the wall, and on that chair sat a woman. Lila looked at the back of her head. The woman didn't move. She looked asleep. "Mrs. Bates?" Lila said softly. No answer. "Mrs. Bates?" she repeated, stepping closer. Still, nothing. Lila reached out and touched her shoulder. Then she turned the chair around and looked at the face. The first thing she saw was the teeth. Large, yellow. Then she understood. There were no eyes, only empty darkness. The face was dry, brown, lifeless. It was a corpse, a dead woman. Lila screamed. She stepped back, ready to run. But suddenly, she froze. Someone was standing in the doorway, a tall shadow, with long gray hair, wearing a flowered dress. Slowly, it moved into the light. The face appeared, white, twisted, with a terrible smile, and wild, shining eyes. Then, Lila saw the knife. She tried to scream again, but no sound came out. Her throat was dry. Her body felt weak. She stepped back. Slowly, the figure rushed toward her, laughing. The knife raised, ready. Suddenly, another person burst into the room. Sam. He grabbed the figure from behind, one arm around the neck, the other gripping the wrist, trying to stop the knife. The figure struggled wildly, screaming, fighting, but Sam was stronger. He forced it down toward the floor. Lila watched, frozen in fear. And then, something impossible happened. As Sam pulled the figure down, the long gray hair slipped and fell aside. Lila's eyes widened. She understood. That was not a woman. It was Norman Bates. And he was screaming like a woman. Lila pressed herself against the wall. She felt sick. She could not move. And behind them, in the chair, sat the real Mrs. Bates, dead, her empty eyes staring, her dry face frozen in a terrible smile. She seemed to be watching her son as he screamed on the cold stone floor. "Look at the fly on my hand." Sometime later, Sam and Lila sat in the office with Judge Chambers. There were many people in the room. They listened to a man. He talked about Norman. "I know this story," Dr. Stainer said, "but not from Norman. I heard it from his mother." "I don't understand," the sheriff said. "I know it is hard," Dr. Stainer said, "but I will explain. There is no Norman Bates now. There was never only one Norman. He was half Norman and half his mother. Now he is only his mother. He will not be Norman again." "Did he kill my sister?" Lila asked. The doctor looked at her. "Yes, I am sorry. He killed Arbogast too. I think we can find them in the swamp near the motel. Maybe we will find other people too. Young women, like your sister. The doctor looked at the people and began to explain. 10 years ago, Norman killed his mother and her man. He lived with his mother, and she was very strong. Then, she loved another man. Norman was jealous. He thought she loved that man more than him, so he killed them. Later, he went out at night. He took his mother's body from the ground. He brought her home and hid her in the cellar. He cared for her like a bird, but it was not enough. Soon he started to think like her, talk like her, be like her. His mother became part of him. Sometimes he was Norman. Sometimes he was his mother. Sometimes he was both. When he liked a girl, the mother in his head was angry. She was jealous. When he met your sister, he liked her. He wanted her. But his mother inside him did not like this. There was a fight in his head. But his mother was stronger. She won. So he became his mother. And his mother killed Marion. After that, Norman thought his mother did it. He put your sister in the swamp. He wanted to help his mother. When he was afraid, he wore his mother's clothes. He walked like her. He talked like her. Now he is his mother. The fight is over. The stronger one won. And the money? The judge asked. The swamp has it, the doctor said. In another room, 2 police officers stood near a door. Inside, there was a small white room. No chairs, no windows. Norman sat there alone. He did not move. He smiled a little. He had Norman's face and body, but inside, he was his mother. Norman was gone. It is sad, the voice in his head said. A mother must talk about her son to the police. They will put him in prison. A bad boy. He looked at people and killed them. He thinks I did it, but I did nothing bad. I only watched. I could not stop him. Look at me. I cannot even move a finger, and I will not try. I will sit here. I will not move again. They are watching me. They will see who I am. I am a good person. I cannot hurt anyone. Look at the fly on my hand. I will not kill it. I cannot. They are watching. They will see, and they will say, look at her. She is a good woman. She cannot even kill a fly.
Подпишись, пожалуйста, или хотя бы поставь лайк. 1 лайк не меняет мир, но меняет путь того, кто делится смыслом.